Christian music legend Matthew Ward started singing with his sisters in the band The Second Chapter of Acts in his early teens. From the band to a successful solo career, his voice has been a staple of Christian radio and instantly recognizable. In part 2 of our interview, Matthew discusses the highs, lows, and in-betweens of his life, a life that mirrors his distinctive vocal style. That's coming up next on The Rick Altizer Show.
From Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, and the home of hot chicken, it's the Rick Altizer Show. Sit back, buckle up. Rick will talk with the movers, shakers, and creators who put Christ in Christian entertainment. He's a man who's clear so the world can hear. Here's Rick Altizer.
Hey, thanks for joining me today. That was Bob Allen, the voice of the Rick Altizer Show. And yes, Nashville is the home of hot chicken. And I don't know why we put that in, but it's just something that we did. And today you are in for a treat. This is part 2 of my interview with singer, songwriter Matthew Ward. We talked last week about Matthew. Thanks for being on the show.
It's amazing how fast the time goes.
I know. It's amazing. One whole week has gone by in the last
Incredible.
5 minutes. We pre-recorded this, so we just finished recording part 1.
Yeah.
But if you missed part 1, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and you can hear it. Also, you can go to anywhere you listen to podcasts. Anywhere. If there's a podcast, you can find it. It's The Rick Altizer Show. And this episode will be there because this is a good one. So you want to check out last week. We talked about the beginnings of Second Chapter of Acts. We talked about kind of the beginnings of Christian music and Matthew's experience with that. So I definitely highly recommend you listen to that. So as we talked about in the last 20 minutes ago, I was going to say last week, your parents died when you were young.
Yeah.
And so the concept of orphan is something you're aware of.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about your book last week, my second chapter. In that, you talk about your struggle with a cancer, prostate cancer,
testicular cancer.
testicular cancer.
Yeah.
And then you've had tragedies in your life, other tragedies.
Yeah.
Can we talk? I want to kind of turn the tables this, and can we talk about orphan and how that relates to feeling sometimes and struggling with feeling that I'm a child of God,
Yeah.
that I've been orphaned by Him.
Yeah. Oh, I've been through that. I sometimes in concerts I talk about when I went through my struggle with cancer in '94. And I mentioned it a little bit last at the concert I did here last week. Some of the things that I came away with after I did, chemotherapy, surgery, all that stuff, and not knowing if I was going to live or die or how long the process was going to be, I really began to start understanding some aspects of the father heart of God. And I never really understood that because of my upbringing. I mean, I had a dad, but he was, he worked all the time, and he was a good dad, but we didn't engage. He was older. He was 50 when he had me. And it just, walking through that ordeal and that struggle, it kind of opened my eyes to how God sees me as a son and how I should see him as a father figure. And how much he does care for me and does love me and does listen to me when I struggle and cry out to him. And so that's probably one of the biggest takeaways for me going through my ordeal with cancer, was truly getting a little bit of a grasp of the father heart of God and how he sees me. And so that was good. I wouldn't want to go through that again, but it was a great takeaway.
So you have this life of young success, band success, Christian music success. As with so many people in Christian music, it comes and it goes. And all of a sudden the sisters don't want to sing anymore, whatever. And now this, the career is, first you're selling all this and now you're not, and things change, and there's this up and down. Mm-hmm. And then you have, cancer and all these struggles. So navigating highs and lows in our faith. Can you talk a little bit about, how God has led you through disappointment?
Yeah.
And then where is God in that? And then how do I relate to God in the midst of my disappointment?
Yeah. Well, I have been through a lot of different things, whether it would be, bizarre relationship with a record label or whatever. You have highs and lows and all that in your career and different things. But one of the things that my wife and I kind of really grasped early on was that, and this is going to sound so stupid and simple, but it really is the heart of a lot of how we approach things, is that God is our provider, right? Okay, so you take that and you put it over here. Then you say that people come to you and go, well, you need to do this kind of record and da-da-da. And they try to emphasize that they are your provider. And it's like, and I've had talks with record execs and stuff and said, you're not my provider. God is my provider. And I don't want to do that project. I feel like the Lord's telling me to do this. So I have to be obedient to that. That's just one area, but you can apply that in a lot of different areas. God is my provider, right? So it's just, it's a simple thing, but it's harder than it sounds to actually trust that. And, but I have learned to trust that more and more. And I've seen it play out in my life, and times when I think, I don't know how this is going to work. And then God pulls something together and it works. It's just, that's been going on for 40 years for me, or more than that.
It's interesting.
50.
The way you sing in second chapter is a metaphor for your life.
Yeah, up and down and all over the place. Yeah.
It's up and down. It's there's beauty in it. It's unique in its own way, but it is up and down, and it's all over the place, and it's in and out, and it's highs and lows. And I just think it's interesting the place you hold in that sound is a metaphor for your life. That God has given you this this gift that allows you to do that, but He's also mirrored that with a life that has ups and downs.
Yeah.
And you're listening to the Rick Altizer Show. My guest today is Matthew Ward. We're talking about his life right now.
Yeah.
Talked about the band last week. Do you want to talk about what's happened recently? Speaking of lows and downs.
Well, it's been a tough year and a half, 2 years for me. I lost a brother to Alzheimer's. I mean, not Alzheimer's. the acronym looks like it would be that. ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. Mm-hmm. And he died October 18th.
Of last year?
Of 2017.
Okay, 2 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, well, it will be 2 years in October.
Right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, really. So it hasn't been that long ago. And that was really, that's a whole nother story. All the stuff he went through, and it's just unbelievably painful, and what a drag. And I hated seeing him go through that. And, and I flew out to Tyler, Texas, where he lived, and he passed away an hour before I got to the room. So that was tough for me not to, give him a kick and say, hey, see you pretty soon, But that was that. And I've never shared this before, actually, so this is going to be new. But that very same day, that morning, early morning, my oldest daughter, Megan, and my son-in-law, Eric, who's Air Force, Eric gave my wife and I a call and said, your daughter is drunk and she can't be around the boys. She had 5 boys. I have 5 grandsons by her. And I'm going to drop her off at your place and I said, okay, fine, And that was the very same day that I left to go see my brother, October 18th, 2017. That was the first time I heard that she had any kind of a drinking issue, right? Was that day. Great day in my mind, October 18th, 2017. Anyway, my daughter Megan got to the house and she's like, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. I haven't had a drink in 6 months. And I'm like, she looks a little cranked, and I couldn't really smell anything on her breath per se. I thought I did, but that's the tricky thing about vodka. Anyway, but it wasn't all that. But I mean, she ended up she went to rehabs, in and out of some rehabs, and just nasty things that happened to her. They say, the doctor said she had what they call hormonally induced bipolar disorder. I never knew there was such a thing. But then, all of her Christian friends, gotta love the Christian friends, they're like, oh, you don't need to take medication. You just trust the Lord. He'll help you with that. And, well, yeah. Anyway, so that's one of my things right now is I'm having an issue with the church and mental illness because they don't like to face it. They don't like to deal with it. I think that's going to be my soapbox for a while here. But so that was October 18th. And she went in and out of rehabs after that for a year and a half or whatever. And she had started self-medicating with alcohol. She developed a severe pancreatitis, and she had some tumors. And that's a whole story I'm not going to go into because it really makes me upset. But my wife, and she moved back to Colorado Springs where we all live, and my grandsons are there, and her now ex-husband, they got a divorce earlier, just a little bit earlier than that. And just a sad deal all the way around. But she would drop off the radar once in a while, like just you text her and you wouldn't get an answer. And she seemed to be doing better. She lost a lot of weight and all this stuff. And but she looked pretty good, and she was trying to hold down a job, and she was doing this and that. But the early part of December came around, and we hadn't heard from her for a while, like 10 days. And so on December 11th, last year, 2018, my wife said, we really need to get a hold of Megan. This isn't right, So we we asked for a wellness check on her apartment where she was living in the Springs. And because of all the laws, they're very critical about privacy and all that. Cops went, knocked on the door, didn't get an answer. Oh, yeah, no answer. That's all they can do, right? So we kept pushing it, and got it to the point where they realized, no, this is a situation. So police sergeant finally showed up. We had to be on premises, not in her apartment, but in the lobby of the place. And they went in, and they were gone for like an hour. And they came back down, and they said, apartment looks good. It's not a wreck, but we did find your daughter dead next to her bed. And I'm like, we're like, what? We thought we were going to take her to the hospital or, whatever. And so I asked them, I said, well, were there alcohol bottles in her room? Because we didn't know at that point, we didn't know. And he goes, yeah. And I said, what? Probably vodka bottles, right? And he goes, yeah, and a big 175 of Fireball and all this stuff. So I just don't know if Thanksgiving time and Christmas was just more than she could handle, or I don't know what the deal is, but she's dead now. I do know that. I don't know how it happened exactly, but it was a mess. So we're dealing with that.
I'm so sorry.
And I'm dealing with all the woulda, coulda, shouldas, maybe I shouldn't have done, I was doing the tough love thing. Well, when you're sober for this many days, then we can, and I look back now and I go, I would just chuck all that. And I don't care if you're drunk, let's have lunch. But I don't know that would have changed anything one iota, looking back on it. But you play those games and you beat yourself up and, so it's been hard. And I grieve and it comes in waves, So that's what I tell people. How are you dealing with it? You don't get over it. You go through it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be going through it the rest of my life, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So
when you have that happen, does that, I can only imagine that's the worst tragedy, is to lose your child, and does that push the orphan buttons?
Oh, sure. Yeah, it does. And it pushes it. It's interesting, the buttons that it's pushed in me. I'm not mad at God over it. I know we all have our time to go and all that good stuff. I get that, but it did. It made me for a season. I think I'm getting over it, but it made me really not trust God. And let me explain a little bit about what I mean by that. Why did we feel prompted to get a hold of her a week after she was dead? Why didn't we get prompted to get a hold of her while she was still with us and we could have done something about it? See, I don't get that. Lord, why didn't you tell us? And people say, well, the Lord just wanted to call her on home, and maybe I don't buy into that a lot. I think it's kind of weird. That's what we say to make ourselves feel better, I think, sometimes. But so I had some trust issues with that, because I'm usually pretty in tune with, I need to act on this, and it's usually right. But to not hear that in my spirit, and then all of a sudden you need to deal with your daughter, and it's like, okay, somebody's got to do the cleanup, I guess. It's just that was hard for me, and it still is a little bit. But I'm getting.
Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you? Tell
why
me
didn't
before?
you give me the heads up?
Mm-hmm.
What purpose did it serve? And maybe people say, well, because I know another family that's dealing with a situation very similar to this, and their daughter is 20 years down the road from where my daughter was. If she would have lived through it another 20 years, this is where my daughter would be. So maybe the Lord just saved her from all of that nightmare and saved us for 20 years of heartache.
Now, you can't know.
You can't. I don't know. You can't begin to. That's what the woulda, coulda, shouldas, guessing games. You blame yourself. What could have I done better? What shouldn't I have done? What you play all those games in your head, and it's rough. It's really rough.
In John chapter 6, they come up to Jesus and they say, "Show us the works of the Father. What are the things we got to do? Show us the works." He says, "The work, one work, is to believe."
Wow.
That's our work. And we think, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. But to believe that he's sovereign, he's in control. He knew she was going to die.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how much stuff we put on ourselves.
And that he's good.
Yeah.
Okay, how can this be good?
Yeah.
Tell me what's good about
good
this.
in this.
It's
five kids don't have their mom.
Yeah.
I don't have my daughter. Yeah, what's good about that, right? My son-in-law's raising 5 kids by himself, basically. It's tough. And they're all boys, too, let me tell you.
5 boys?
We can't keep them all. My wife and I will take 2 or 3 out of the 5, but we can't have all 5 of them. It just makes us nuts.
So there's that struggle, that we have. And you're sharing your story, but, there are people listening who are relating to you right now.
Yeah.
Who've had things happen in their life that they don't understand. They'll never understand it.
Sure.
And they'll never get over it.
Right.
And it's not anything you ever get over. Mm-mm. You get through and but you'll go to heaven,
Yeah.
never getting over that.
I talked to a good friend of mine, actually my wife's boss, a guy named Bill Moritz, really cool guy. He lost his daughter 20 years ago. And I had a conversation with him privately I go, it never really goes away, does it? He goes, no. And I said, this is what I've been learning already, is that the face of it changes, but the pain of it never goes away. And he goes, that's exactly right. He goes, that's really well put. The approach of it, the way you see it is different, but it still hurts so much,
It's interesting how your life is, as terrible as it sounds, God's been preparing you, throughout the loss of your mom and your dad.
Yeah.
The loss of a certain kind of a career, the loss of your brother, the loss of health, and am I going to be around? And then to navigate that, and then to hear you so beautifully proclaim, last night, you're still my king.
Yeah,
you're still my redeemer.
This is still what I believe about you.
Yeah. This, I'm going to stand on this because this is my work, is to believe this.
Right.
That even in the midst of all of my junk that I'm going through, in my pain, real pain, you're still God.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. I'll never understand it.
Yeah.
One day I'll know as I'm known. But for right now, on this side of heaven.
Right now, it's seeing through a glass darkly. Yeah, it's true. That's really well put.
And it's I'm going to ask. I'm just feeling led. For those who just tuned in, you're listening to the Rick Altizer Show. My guest is Matthew Ward, and I'm going to ask my listeners, as when this show's over, to pray for you. To pray that God
take it.
For you and your family,
Yeah.
and for these 5 boys, your 5 grandsons who don't have a mom,
and my 2 other daughters.
Your 2
that
other
are dealing
daughters.
with it in their own way. I mean, it's been really rough. So,
and please keep Matthew in your prayers. And I'm going to be praying. I think that's a great prayer. I believe, Lord, help my unbelief.
yeah,
I think that's a great prayer that we don't want to talk about our unbelief. We don't want to, because we're so works oriented.
Yeah.
We have to do. And keep doing.
yeah. Keep doing.
But we don't like to, because of our self-righteousness, whatever. We don't want to see the fact that I'm really struggling with believing that God's telling me the truth. I'm really struggling that He is good. I'm really struggling that He's in control.
Yeah,
and that is our work. That's a lifelong work.
Oh, it is.
And
it's a journey.
So you said last night was the first time you've performed. You've performed twice.
Actually, it was the second concert
time.
I
I'm
did.
sorry.
Yeah, the first one I did was in Southern California on February 16th, day after my birthday. So, and that was hard. I almost canceled that one, but I know the guy that runs the venue, and he's a good friend, and I couldn't do it. So I thought, it's time. I need to go. And I did cancel a New Year's Eve deal I had out on the East Coast. I'm not coming. And they're like, okay. And then I had another deal. I'm not coming. Okay. They totally understood. But it's time to get back on the horse and trot around a bit. So.
Well, I know I'll say for me, I was encouraged when you shared your story last night. And then you began to sing about God's your Redeemer. Mm-hmm. God is your King still.
Yeah.
That was encouraging for me to see you do that.
Yeah.
And you talked about how some of the songs came to you and how you wrote them. And if we believe God's sovereign, He knew when you wrote that song that you were going to sing it here, and it was going to mean something different here than it did when you wrote it.
Absolutely.
And
that's a conversation my wife and I have had, exactly the same thing.
And it did. And it was powerful. And not that you would trade that for, you'd still have your daughter back in a nanosecond.
Oh, yeah.
But I was so encouraged by, and I was uplifted, and it was powerful that the truth of your message that, even in the midst of terrible suffering that I wouldn't wish on anybody, He's still my Redeemer.
Yeah.
He's still my King.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stand up here even in the things I struggle in unbelieving, I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to proclaim it and sing it.
Yeah.
I'm going to sing it. And it was powerful.
Good.
It was powerful. And, this talk has been great. Thanks for going there with me on this one. I know this was hard.
Absolutely.
You can get more information on Matthew by going to MatthewWard.com. We talked about his awesome book. You can get music there. And again, please be praying for Matthew and his family. Matthew, thank you so much for sharing your heart, opening up to us.
Yeah, you bet. My pleasure.
I'm going to commit to be praying for you.
I appreciate that.
If there's a show you've missed, you can go to my website, rickaltizer.com, and catch up. Or you can listen to my podcast in iTunes or wherever you hear your podcasts. Just search for The Rick Altizer Show. Altizer is spelled Altizer. I want to thank you for listening. Hey, would you tell a friend about this show and share the love? Be sure to check us out again next week as we discuss how we communicate the gospel through media to our culture. Let's be clear so the world can hear. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening.